Hello, my dear friends. I'm Vasily Yunack, and I promised to some of my friends, good friends, to say a little bit about my studies on the book of Job. Yes, it happened that some 16 years ago I published a book on the book of Job, in which I described my new vision on the book, which I found for myself there. And for me, that was so astonished that I dared to entitle my book "Revelation from the Whirlwind." And it had subtitle which would say the origin, the the, the nature and the destiny of evil in the book of Job. In fact, when I began to study the book of Job, I found that the majority of commentators whom I had chance to read, and by the way, I read more than 200 titles, everything what I could find at that moment at the library of Zaoksky Adventist Seminary in Russia, and those which I could find online on different languages. So majority of commentators on the book of Job, they would say that God in fact did not answer Job for his inquiries regarding the reason of the sufferings. And most commentators would say that the same God who told us Bible readers in modern time told us everything what happened beyond the scene there, what is described in chapter 1 and 2. The same God for some reason did not reveal that to Job. I think it was unfair. I think that God should reveal to Job the same information which he revealed to us. Well, it will be a little bit later then, but nevertheless he should know. And in my study, I found that those commentators that say that God simply asked many hard questions to Job and showed his muscles, let's say, and said, Job, you cannot understand these simple issues about nature, about creation. You can see my power. So what are you asking me for? And it's not the answer. I don't believe that God is such person. And because of that, when I began to read the book of Job, I found that God said to Job something different. In fact, he answered to Job exactly what he told us in the first chapters. But he answered to Job on his own language. He answered in a different way, not like he would tell this to us. By the way, currently in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we study the book of Job during our adult Sabbath school lessons. And the author of these adult lessons is a person whom I really appreciate, whom I value as a good student, good scholar, and he knows Bible, and he has many gifts and talents, and he in every I would say in every paragraph, in every sentence even of the quarterly, he presents some fresh, good, new ideas, which really wonderful. Unfortunately, his understanding of what the Lord said to Job is equal to majority of commentators. And that was the reason why many of my friends, many other pastors and in different places asked me to come and conduct seminars on Job and to present that what I found here, because it helps to understand God better. It helps to understand the book of Job better. And even it helps to understand the Adventist idea of the great controversy. Because before I began to learn, before I began to study the book of Job, or I would say it was rather during that time or so, doesn't matter, but I had another idea regarding the spirit of prophecy. I had an idea to compare the spirit of prophecy, particularly the Great Controversy series, with the Bible, and to find those items which present in the Great Controversy set of 5 books, but those which are not present in the Bible, and somehow to compare and to find and to prove that the spirit of prophecy does not contradict the Bible, and that whatever is added, it's logically comes out of the Bible and it has biblical base, at least. And when I start to read, I start from the very first chapter of the very first volume, Patriarchs and Prophets, and right away I found that our Adventist description, our Adventist understanding of the conflict in heaven between God and Satan, it does not obvious from Bible. I found that for the most scholars, evangelical scholars, in most commentators, commentaries for the Bible, those texts on which we as Adventists base our understanding of the great controversy, of the origin of Satan, these are not understood as we do understand them. For example, in Isaiah or in Ezekiel, these 2 famous chapters, they are presented in not like having anything to do with Satan. So then I looked at Revelation chapter 12, which tells about the war in heaven. To tell frankly, it speaks about the time of Calvary. That was when devil was cast down to earth from heaven. So most major biblical information about the great controversy, or I would say in other way, the first chapter of the conflict series, first chapter of Patriarchs and Prophets, seems not to be supported by clear biblical evidences. And for me it was, I wouldn't say disappointment, but it was trouble for me in my project. From the first chapter it failed, because I couldn't reconcile Bible with the spirit of prophecy, with the conflict series. But when I discovered that revelation in the book of Job, it became for me that missing biblical proof for the first chapter of Patriarchs and Prophets. Besides, I don't speak about some liberal modern biblical scholars. I'm talking about conservative, I'm talking about traditional view on the book of Job, which Jewish people have, which Seventh-day Adventist Church holds, which presented in the spirit of prophecy. I hold to this tradition that Moses was the author of the book of Job, and that the book of Job was written by Moses while in the wilderness, there in Medium wilderness, where he was hiding from Egyptians. In that time he wrote the book of Job and the Genesis. That's our understanding. And because I understand the book of Job is the oldest book of the Bible, it was the first book, not of Pentateuch of Moses, not of first of 5 books, but first of 6 books of Moses. Moses wrote Job and then began to write about creation in Genesis first chapter. The same we can see in conflict series of Ellen White. First we read about conflict in heaven, and then in second chapter we read about creation. The same structure. What we found in the Bible, in Moses' writings, the same structure we can see in the conflict series of Ellen White, of the Spirit of Prophecy. So for me, what I found, it was great support in my confidence in our teaching, in our understanding as Seventh-day Adventist Church. Also, because what I am talking here, I'm virtually go against, I would say, 99% of theologians, Bible scholars. And who am I? I'm not a scholar, Bible scholar, though I have some minor degrees. Let's say I was teaching in seminary for a while, some 10 years teaching, and again not biblical, not theology subjects, though I was teaching also poetical books of the Bible, including Job and other poetical books. Nevertheless, I do not consider myself that kind of theologian, Bible scholar who could stand against those big names, those people who dedicated all their life to Bible studies. Nevertheless, I'm doing this virtually in my book. Because of that, following the testimony of Spirit of Prophecy, following these counsels of the Spirit of Prophecy for new light, first what I did, I presented this to those people surrounding me whom I knew as people who study the Bible, who knows biblical teachings, doctrines, who teach them. And I asked their advices. I presented this to all my colleagues in Zaoksky Seminary, to all teachers, including students of theology also. We discussed a lot of that subject before it was published in the book. I could name some Russian theologians, because all this was in Russia. I am a Russian person. But besides of those Russian theologians and teachers and people who know the Bible, including some elderly people knowing Jewish language, knowing reading Bible in the original, I would name one person who is more well known, like Daniel Duda, who was in that time he was president of Prague Seventh-day Adventist Seminary in Czechia. Later he was in theology department in Newbold College, so I was discussing this with him. And after my book was published in our Russian denominational publishing house in Zaoksky, it happened that it was republished twice during half a year, because first set of copies was sold immediately. And it happened that first books we received from the publishing just before the Christmas vacation of year 2000. And in April of year 2001, we had biblical conference for theology students in Zaoksky Theological Seminary. And for that conference, different scholars, Adventist scholars from different places of the world came presenting their findings, their research papers and so on. It was, as usually in seminaries we have, and in other schools we have these scientific conferences. So I was one of the translators for foreign speakers. And it happened that when I came to translate to the next speaker, and it was Dr. Gordon Christo from Spicer College in India. In that time he was president of the Spicer College. I know that later on he was also secretary of the division in India of Southern Asia division. Nevertheless, in that particular moment, Dr. Gordon Christo was presenting his readings for the conference, and I came in to translate him. And when I looked at his paper, which was laid there at the pulpit, and I looked and I saw the gospel in the book of Job, the prophecy in the book of Job, revelation in the book of Job. He had 4 presentations, 4 works which he presented at that conference. And it happened, it was scheduled that I was translating to him. And after the first one, I related all this, what I will tell you right now, I related to Dr. Gordon Christo. And he was amazed, and he said that it was his understanding as well, you know. And that was great support for me. In fact, Dr. Gordon Christo said that it was the book of Job, and this idea of great controversy in the book of Job was the theme of his doctoral thesis when he was getting his doctoral degree in theology. Then, sometime our church launched a new project of new Bible commentary. It was in the beginning of, or in the end of 1990s, sometime in that time. And the church asked Dr. Gordon Christo to write the commentary for the book of Job. He said that this commentary was never printed because they abandoned the project. But nevertheless, the commentary was already written and submitted to the commentary committee. And he said that whatever I told him, he virtually had in his studies, in his commentary and so on. Why I mention all this? Because the clear testimony of the Spirit of Prophecy says that before we begin to speak about any kind of new light, any kind of new understanding, we have to present this to the people of trust, those people who know the truth, those people who already stand long time for our doctrines and so on. And if they will find no light, no new light in this thing, then we should abandon it. And you know, for me it was somehow for me it was hard to present something which I saw as new light from the book of Job. It was not a new doctrine. No new doctrine is here. It's new interpretation of the book. New presentation which I could not find anywhere in another place. Well, to be honest, I found at least 2 more places, and in my book I was referring to that. One reference which I was presenting was to another Adventist scholar, Dr. Edwin Thiel, who was theology professor, Old Testament professor in Andrews University. He started to write a book on the Job. Unfortunately, he died before he could finish his work, and his wife took his papers and brought it to some complete form and published the book which called Job and Devil. When I read that book, I saw that if Dr. Edwin Thiel would finish the book by himself, he would probably write the same what I did. But he started the book from the beginning and he had no chance to come to the end. So I make reference to his book as the person who had approximately the same vision as me. Also, I found in one historical book, just now I don't have, though why not? I can take a reference from my book here to say that another source which I found close to my understanding. One moment, please. Yes. The book Job and Devil was written by Edwin and Margaret Thiel. Margaret Thiel, the wife of Edwin Thiel, the lady, she was also a doctor in theology, I believe. I don't remember exactly. She finished the book of Edwin Thiel. And my understanding that she didn't catch up whatever Edwin Thiel wanted to say, but I might be wrong. Also, another book which I found, it was a book of Russian language about Antichrist, which was some compilation of different or a review of different works on Antichrist. And it was said, there was, in that book was quoted Gregory, the theologist, that Gregory the Height, one of Rome bishops, lived in 6th century, and he wrote a book, Moralia in Job. In his book, Moralia in Job, he also presents suffering of Job as prototype of suffering of Jesus, and he presents that Job was fighting that Antichrist, and that was conflict of Job and Antichrist in his understanding. So that also a little bit close to the idea which I would like to present. Anyway, that's everything what I want to say as introduction, as something like explanation why whatever I say has some kind of acceptance in among other theologists, among other people who have authority in knowledge of the Bible and so on. So, with this introduction, I would like briefly, as far as possible, but I know that it will take another hour, maybe. I would like to present the main idea, the main view of the book of Job as I see it. I will skip many minor details which I have in my book as well, those which are not important right now, because I was going through other ideas through friends of Job and so on. Many other minor details, secondary items could be added to this, but I want to say about the most important thing. And the most important thing is the part where the Lord Himself is speaking to Job. That's the most important part. That's the reason for the book of Job to exist. And unfortunately, I was greatly disappointed when I received this quarterly for this year, and I went through it, and I found that in our Sabbath school studies on the book of Job in this quarter, we will have only one day for the study of those 4 chapters of the Lord's speech, even not one lesson. In the lesson number 11, only one day of Tuesday. That's the only part where the author of our quarterly invites us to read a little bit, some 40 verses out of 4 chapters of whatever God said to Job, and to think about that. And he brings no good idea out of that, except of the popular view that God is simply asks questions about creation, about nature, those questions which Job cannot answer. So because of that, I think that it is important for us today to concentrate on those 4 chapters of the Lord's speaking to Job. But before that, as an introduction, I want to read from the last chapter. Yes, in our quarterly, the author does the same. He starts from the end. I want to read from the last chapter, and here I will be reading from New King James Version of the Bible. I don't think that the version is important, simply as it used to present, usually in Russian language we use Russian Standard Synodal version, and only if we use another version we say which kind we'll use. Here I chose for myself New King James because this is easier to read and more traditional, let's say, more traditional in modern interpretation. Anyway, let's open Job chapter 42, the last chapter of Job, and we will read here a few verses. Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know then that you can do everything, and that no purpose of yours can be withheld from you. You asked, who is this who hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered that I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Listen, please, and let me speak. You said, I will question you, and you shall answer me. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I abhor myself, and repent in dust and ashes. Now, that's words, conclusions of Job after he heard what the Lord said. And I want to point these words which turned me to that special study of the book of Job, which lasted for 7 long years until I published the book. Look at these words again. Therefore, I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me which I did not know. That means that Job learned something new which he never knew before. And these things were too wonderful. Can you imagine? He understood something from the Word of God. God revealed him something wonderful, something important, something which this wise man did not know before. And this brought him to repent that he was speaking words without knowledge. You know, here, who is he who hides counsel without knowledge? In Russian Bible and in I understand in Standard King James. Well, I didn't check. I hope, though I might check this. One moment. Chapter 42. Oh yes, King James also says the same. Who hides counsel. In Russian version, it says who darkens the providence of God. Really, who speaks against God. And well, I wouldn't stop at this too long, but what I want to say, that Job was speaking against God words without knowledge. And he understood something new about God, and he repented because of that. Let's look at what Job knew and what Job didn't know and what God revealed to him. So, let's go to first chapters, and we will find in the very first chapters that first of all, Job didn't know what happened behind the scene. Job didn't know that God and Satan began fighting between themselves, and Job became the, let's say, the battlefield for this battle between God and Satan. Job didn't know that. But the question is, did Job know about Satan himself? We understand that it was Satan who took everything away from Job. It was not God. But we read that in Job chapter 1, and we look here at the verse 21. And he said, Job said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. These were words of Job. He said, God gave, and God has taken away. In all this, verse 22, in all this, Job did not sin nor charge God with wrong. Can you imagine? Why it's stated to us that in these words Job did not sin nor charge God with wrong? This is not obvious, because Job said that God has taken away from me. Let's look at chapter 2. Chapter 2 is second part of suffering of Job. Here Satan requires from God to touch the body of Job, and God permits to him. And in this chapter, in this way, we can read these words, verse 7 of chapter 2. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils, and so on. Here in this chapter, it's stated clearly that it was Satan who struck Job. Now let's see what Job answers when he speaks to his wife in answer to her, and he says in these words, verse 10 of chapter 2. But he said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity from God?" And again, we have this addition of the author. In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. When he said that we can receive evil things, adversity from God, he didn't sin against God? It's not obvious. Why? It's said that he didn't sin. It's because there is a biblical principle which we can find in Leviticus chapter 4. In that chapter it's stated several times, if anyone would sin, when he will understand, when he will acknowledge that he sinned, then he will have to bring that and that offering. Because God can read my mind, can know my motives and inner thoughts, I cannot hide from him anything. So for God, he can judge me exactly when I sinned or when I sinned not, because I didn't know. Human laws would require, if you don't know, it doesn't matter. If you violated the law, you will have to be punished for that violation of the law. And we don't care if you knew that or not. That will not exempt you from the punishment. With God, it works different. If you didn't know, you are not obligated, or you are not subject to punishment because you didn't know. Because of that biblical principle, Job, he did not sin, he did not say anything wrong, because he did not know about Satan at all. He did not know about Satan. In fact, when we would look at the whole Old Testament, we can see, at least in Russian Bible, I calculated 18 times mentioned Satan. Out of these 18 times, 14 times it's in these first two chapters of Job. One time in Chronicles, and 3 times in the Zechariah. That's all. No Satan mentioned in at least Russian translation of the Bible, of the Old Testament. Why God hid the truth about Satan, the truth about great controversy, hide it from people of Old Testament? It's a good question. And I have only my own idea, my own, I would present to you my answer to this. I do not pretend for anything more than simply my understanding. Because for God, God could not say a lot about his, let's say, military plans for the future battles. He had his military secrets, confidential things for the future cavalry battle, for the future actions. It was just the beginning. So God could not reveal everything, could not say everything. And before the Calvary, it was unfair for God to tell about Satan different things which we know from the New Testament. Because God, he leads the fair battle with Satan. No, not looking that Satan is unfair with him. God was always fair. So from one side, God could not reveal everything prior to the Calvary, prior to that, the first and last battle, let's say, with the evil. But because before that, beside of that, God not being able to say about Satan, he decided that it would be better to take responsibilities for all evil on the earth on himself, rather than permit what we have in some Oriental religion, like we have all these, that these two drops, black and white, in symbol of yin yang, of these two opposite parts, plus minus, women, men, female, masculine, and so on, hot, cold, and so on. They believe, these Oriental religions believe, that good and evil coexist eternally. Never was time when was only one thing, never will be time when there will be only another thing. They coexist. So this is dualism. This, like two gods. One God is good God, another God is evil God. They constantly oppose one to another. They constantly conflict, fight, but they will be constantly there. Because of that, you want to be with good God, I want to be with evil God. So what? I have right. Because evil is part of our life, perpetual part of our life. That's Oriental pagan religion teaches. God didn't want to let people to run into this dualism, to this two God system, that Satan is another God whom good God cannot overcome. So this is the reason why in Old Testament we don't see Satan in the full picture. We don't see the great controversy in the full picture, but we see whatever is there. Now, let's look at Job and let's see how his understanding of God and great controversy changed during the time. How he was in his dialogue with his friends who turned to be his enemies. Satan used them to hurt Job even more. But those are secondary details. We don't touch them right now. I will bring just 2 points out of what Job was telling. I understand that we all have understanding of the book of Job, of everything what was there, so I'm not talking details. I'm not talking to those people who never read the book of Job. Because of that, I'm speaking just about 2 fragments, and then we'll go to the words of God. So first, I would like to turn to chapter 6. Yes? To chapter 7. I would like to turn to chapter 7. And just now I'm looking here, I refer first to Russian Bible and then to English, which is on my screen, so it takes a little bit time. Currently I don't use English language too much, and because of that I don't have printed English Bible under my hands, and my computer is a little bit slow. So Job chapter 7, and I will open right away verse 12. Let's read it carefully and listen. Job, when he complains to God, when he speaks to God, when he asks what happens to him among other things, he speaks these words. Job chapter 7 verse 12. Am I a sea or a sea serpent that you sent a guard over me? Job compares himself with a sea. I would say here it should be not indefinite article, but it should be the article there. Am I the sea or the sea or this sea serpent that you placed guard over me? Why he's saying this? Why he refers to himself as sea or sea serpent? Earlier in chapter 3 he already referred to sea serpent, to Leviathan, and we can understand that in his pains, in his trying to find explanation or words of expression of his feelings, his understanding, his whatever is in his mind, in trying to find words for that, he refers to those ancient mythology about sea Tiamat, dragon Lilith, and other good and bad gods of pagan religion, and the idea that good gods fight with bad gods, and during the day good gods lock down bad gods in sea Tiamat, but for the night those bad gods out of sea Tiamat comes out and do the evil things. That's one of those Mesopotamian, those ancient Eastern mythology about good and bad gods. So when Job began to think about whatever is going on with him, to compare, to somehow relate this to God in his inquiries, he says, God, am I that evil sea or that evil serpent that you are fighting against me, trying to lock me down there, as if I would be the essence of all evil? Well, at least friends of Job came and wanted to say that you are so evil that you are still suffered a little, you should be suffered even more. And Job said, am I the sea? Am I the serpent? Am I the dragon? Am I that beast with whom you're fighting? Am I the essence of all evil? we will remember, and shortly we will return back to this example. Let's look another words of Job, and these words are in chapter 9. I could bring to you many parallel words, and in our study we can do that, but I want to give you ideas. So Job 9, and in Job 9 I want to read several texts. Let's say starting from verse 15, and then sometime from verse 22. Let's say from verse 15 we are reading. Again, Job is speaking just now to his friends, or just complaining, speaking to himself, just speaking out loud. And he says, Job 9:15, for though I were righteous, I could not answer him, God. I would beg mercy of my judge. If I called and he answered me, I would not believe that he was listening to my voice. For he crushes me with the tempest and multiplies my wounds without cause. Well, wait a moment. Let me check this in another version, because it's not like I read in my Russian text. Job 9, verse 16. Yeah, it's a little bit different idea. In Russian text, I would not believe that my voice was heard by him who crushed me. This little bit different. I will have to check the original Hebrew text, but not now. My idea is that Job was telling, if God would answer me, and I know God, I know who is God, I know his character, I would not believe that God who is answering me is the same who crushes me. Because, let's read verse 22 of the same chapter 9. He continues, it is all one thing. Therefore I say, he destroys the blameless and the wicked. If the scourge slays suddenly, he laughs at the plight of the innocent. The earth is given unto the hands of the wicked. He covers the faces of its judges. If it was not he, who else could it be? You see, at the beginning, Job continued to attribute God with evil doings. He says that he laughs at the plights of innocents. He destroys the blameless and the wicked. But then he tries to compare, well, the God whom I know, he is not that. Because of that, earlier he said, if he would answer me, I would not believe that I received answer from the same person who kills me, who hits me, who crushes me. And here in the verse in the verse 24, second part, if it is not he, who else could it be? Job began to understand that there must be two persons with whom he met. One is God, and another, there cannot be two kinds of water, bitter and sweet water from one source, from one spring. There cannot be two kinds of fruits from one tree. It would be either good or bad. From one good God cannot be two fruits, two sources of one is sweet and another bitter. That's what Job comes to the conclusion. And his question is, who else could it be? I will not be studying together with you right now more of more of other words of Job or his friends. Now we will go directly, we'll go straight to the words of the Lord. But because I already took almost whole hour of your time, I would like to stop this first part, and then I will start to recording second part, in which we will go through these 4 chapters of the words of the Lord. Okay? Let's take a break.